with.
Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort is a 2014 American slasher film directed by Valeri Milev and written by Frank H. Woodward. Serving as a reboot and the sixth installment in the Wrong Turn film series, the movie follows Danny, who inherits a secluded resort in the West Virginia mountains. Accompanied by his girlfriend Tony and their friends, Danny discovers that the resort is inhabited by his long-lost relatives, cannibalistic killers known as the Hillikers. As Danny becomes entangled in his family's gruesome traditions, his relationships with his friends deteriorate, leading to a series of horrifying events. The film was released on DVD and digitally on October 21, 2014, grossing over $1 million in home sales. Notably, the film faced legal issues in Ireland due to the unauthorized use of a missing woman's photo, resulting in a recall and re-release with the image blurred. Wrong Turn 6 received mixed reviews, with some praising its gore and others criticizing its plot and character development. Horror movies have covered a wide range of subgenres since the earliest days of Hollywood, from supernatural haunting stories to creature feature monster movies. One of the greatest corners of the genre is the slasher, which has given horror some of its greatest icons, from Leatherface and Michael Myers to Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger. Every decade puts its spin on the subgenre, and the 1990s were no different. While the 1990s posted a relatively weak output of slashers, it did deliver some of the genre's most iconic and unique stories, particularly fresh and original ideas. From new franchises bringing the horror genre to new heights, to sequels that tried something new, the decade is surprisingly dynamic and versatile. After years of supernatural franchises, the turn of the century looked more towards more grounded takes on the genre, leaning into a balance between horror and thriller for some of its best stories. Child's Play introduced the world to Chucky, a living doll possessed by the spirit of a serial killer who seeks to continue his bloodshed in toy form. After being seemingly defeated in the first movie by Andy, he is reassembled in the sequel by the Play Pals Corporation in an ill-fated attempt to prove they weren't at fault. When the killer doll escapes, he seeks out Andy for revenge, planning to murder him and steal his soul so he can perform a ritual to become human again. Child's Play 2 continues the franchise's campy and comedic tone as the increasingly desperate killer doll terrorizes everyone in his way as he hunts Andy. Almost as good as the first movie, it brings plenty of good scares to its fans, though it is on the weaker end of its decade. The Friday the 13th franchise tells the story of Jason Voorhees, a vengeful slasher driven to the murder of camp counselors over his own drowning and subsequent death of his killer mother. After having murdered dozens of innocent people between the second and eighth movie, the latter of which concluded in Manhattan, he returned for one of the most bizarre franchise slashers of all time, Jason Goes to Hell. Jason Goes to Hell is one of the darkest entries in the franchise, as well as the strangest. The movie follows Jason possessing a man after he eats the killer's heart, allowing him to return to Crystal Lake and murder more teens. However, when a bounty hunter learns that Jason's living relatives can kill him for good, he seeks their aid, as the local sheriff launches a manhunt for the killer. Famously establishing that Evil Dead's Necronomicon exists in the same world as Jason, the movie is worth a watch even if only for its odd creative direction. Cherry Falls takes place in the titular town, where a mysterious woman preys on virgins who she brutally murders and leaves the word virgin behind as a warning. However, when she overhears her father, the town sheriff, discussing the case, she realizes there's more to it than that, and that a heinous crime may be fueling the murders. Cherry Falls, being a 90s slasher, is something of a technicality since the initial release was in 1999. But the film didn't receive mainstream distribution until 2000. Nonetheless, it makes for a fantastic film, continuing the trend of more self-aware slashers after the success of Scream. A distinctly 90s film, the story makes a point of pushing the envelope on social taboos, as can be seen in the bizarre plot point of the students organizing an orgy to try and stay alive. The original Halloween follows Laurie Strode's night of terror with Michael Myers, who claimed the lives of her best friends in his mission to murder her. After escaping her brother in the sequel, Laurie was missing from the franchise until its seventh entry, 1998's Halloween H20. The film picks up on her story 20 years later, now the headmistress of a private school and mother of a 17-year-old boy. When all but 4 of the students leave campus for a trip to Yosemite, it's down to Laurie to try and warn them when she learns that Michael is on the prowl. Halloween H20 is one of the franchise's more underrated entries, holding a love-slash-hate reputation among fans for what many viewed as a cop-out ending and mishandling of characters. Still, it made for an interesting chapter for Laurie Strode and Michael Myers' relationship, and the gated private school setting proved particularly good for the iconic killer. The Nightmare on Elm Street franchise follows supernatural serial killer Freddy Krueger as he stalks his victims in their dreams, murdering them in creative and unique ways which have real-world effects. After 6 movies of Freddy slashing his way through the children of Springwood, the franchise took a genuinely unexpected turn in the 7th movie, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. In a great piece of metafiction, the film follows the cast of the original film playing themselves, focusing on Heather Langenkamp as she begins to believe Freddy is real after all. New Nightmare brought something new to the franchise, ditching the classic Freddy story for a more self-aware psychological horror, one that maintains the mystery of whether Heather's experiences are real. The film acts as both a kind of behind-the-scenes Nightmare on Elm Street project and a truly unique slasher, as well as Robert Englund's final theatrical outing as the iconic slasher. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise follows a variety of characters as they cross paths with Leatherface and his cannibalistic family in rural Texas. The 3rd movie follows a couple, Michelle and Ryan, on a road trip through Texas, where they're chased down by Leatherface's family. After they are run off the road and cause a survivalist, Benny, to crash, they find themselves set upon by Leatherface himself. While trying to get away, they cross paths with Sarah, a survivor of one of the killer's last attacks, who tries to help them get away. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Roman 3 struck a balance between the tone of the first film and something new, following Leatherface as he tears his way through the woods in search of his victims. After the campy mess of the 2nd film, the 3rd movie reoriented the franchise back in the direction of dark slasher, even if it does maintain a dark humor throughout its story. Urban legend begins when a young woman, Michelle Mancini, is murdered in an attack that closely mirrors the killer in the back seat, urban legend. The story then focuses on Natalie, a student at Pendleton University, as she learns of the death of Michelle. When the killer strikes on campus, Natalie realizes that they're using urban legends as inspiration. As she struggles to convince her friends that her theory is true, she turns to college reporter Paul to aid her in her investigation. Urban legend was one of the first and best Scream-inspired franchises, borrowing Wes Craven's use of genre commentary and metafiction. Considering how so many of the best horror movies go back to urban legends, seeing so many of the stories rolled into one film as a modus operandi made for a fantastic experience, one begging for a remake. I Know What You Did Last Summer takes place in a small seaside fishing town, where a group of 4 friends are set to graduate high school. After a night of partying, their lives take a turn when they accidentally run over a man in the road. Terrified by the thought of their lives being ruined by the incident, the friends agree to dump his body at the bottom of the ocean and never speak of it again. 1 year later, they become the target of harassment and violence, which soon escalates to murder, causing them to try and figure out who is seeking revenge for their hit and run. I Know What You Did Last Summer soon became something of a cultural touchstone in the slasher genre. Aided by its stellar cast that included Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Ryan Phillippe, the movie remains one of the best in the more grounded side of slashers. Candyman focuses on Helen Lyle, a grad student writing a paper on urban legends. She decides to look into the Candyman, a supposed hook-handed killer who stalks the residents of the Cabrini Green housing project. After a violent encounter with a local gang leader who she identifies as the Candyman, Helen is approached by the real killer, who frames her for murder to help spread the word of his legend. Candyman is much deeper than the average slasher, blending social commentary and urban legend with mystery. Once an artist who was brutally murdered by racist Southerners, the vengeful spirit can be summoned anytime someone says his name 5 times in front of a mirror, and he uses terror to ensure his legend never dies. With a creepy and disturbing atmosphere from start to finish, the movie is a masterclass in building and maintaining tension, and Tony Todd ensures his villain makes an impression. Set in the small California town of Woodsboro, Scream begins with the arrival of a masked serial killer who targets students of the local high school, particularly friends of Sidney Prescott. Thrown into a spiral of fear and paranoia, Sidney and her friends, along with investigative reporter Gail Weathers, try and figure out who's killing people. From her boyfriend to some of her close friends, the final girl's terror culminates in a house party that sees the killers revealed. To say that Scream was the definitive slasher of the 90s would seriously undersell the impact and influence Wes Craven's masterpiece had on the genre. Along with its sequel, the movie brought a sense of realism to the slasher genre, dispensing with the supernatural in favor of classic murder mystery. Each of the films invites audiences to speculate as to which of the characters is the killer behind the mask, and the original movie remains king of 90s horror. Slasher movies are generally considered to be among the more disreputable horror film subgenres. They can be misogynistic, punishing women for their sexuality while also appealing to viewers' most prurient, voyeuristic impulses, celebrating the male gaze while damning the objects of that gaze except for a virginal, final girl. But slasher movies can veer the closest to true crime of any of the horror subgenres, meaning that its issues of representation often say as much about an audience that wants to consume beastly criminality as packaged narrative, as it does the filmmakers who deliver them to us. The best slasher movies are as idea-oriented as any horror films, and almost all force you to look within and ask yourself, what's the line between you watching a horrific act and finally looking away? The genre as we know it was birthed in the mid-70s from American filmmakers like Tobe Hooper and John Carpenter, who broke new ground and introduced classic horror villains with films like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween. But its roots stretch back to formative 40s films like The Lodger or The Leopard Man, which introduced the concept of a silent stalker into horror filmmaking. The giallo wave of the late 60s and 70s in Italy, led by auteurs like Dario Argento and Mario Bava, proved key foundational texts for the slashers to follow, frightening audiences with unseen murderers in tight black gloves and elaborate, gruesome murder scenes that pushed boundaries for gore in cinema. From the grungy, indie films of the 70s that birthed the genre, slashers have since become arguably the most mainstream of mainstream horror. In the 80s and 90s, movies like Chucky and A Nightmare on Elm Street kept the genre alive, while Scream introduced a self-referential streak that many lesser entries into the canon still attempt to emulate. While today's discourse in the genre tends to be dominated by elevated horror like your Hereditaries or the Babadooks, slashers remain the gateway that can turn a horror skeptic into a foaming-at-the-mouth fan. Happy Death Day. 2017. Jessica Roth leads the 2017 horror comedy Happy Death Day as the Unlucky Tree, an undergrad cool girl who finds herself ensnared in a particularly painful time loop on her 20-something birthday. hunted by a back-to-basics killer donning a creepy baby costume, the school mascot. We're told Tree sees her timeline reset each time she's murdered by a stalker. She grows more and more determined to unmask with each stab, strangle, and drowning. The script from Scott Lobdell is subversive and snappy without growing cynical. And director Christopher Landon brings his paranormal activity-earned speed to the surprisingly effective thrill ride The Cabin in the Woods. 2012 writers Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard holed up in a cabin in the woods to concoct this fantasy horror send-up, churning out 15 pages a day over 3 days of fevered creation that was joyous and fun. They weren't sure their creation would get made. Unlike many horror offerings of its day, the $41 million Cabin in the Woods, directed by Goddard, is hilarious, outrageous, and genre deconstructing, with plenty of VFX without devolving into a confused mash-up. It allows the audience to enjoy its sexy, exploitative, subversive theme park ride through horror monsters of the past, and some demented new creations as well, as it sends up all the clichés of the genre. The archetypes are there. 5 college kids try to survive a vacation gone wrong. There's the athletic hunk Chris Hemsworth, the perky blonde Anna Hutchison, the brainy academic Jesse Williams, the pothead joker Fran Krantz, and the intelligent brunette virgin Kristen Connolly. Who gets killed off first? Who survives? Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins are part of a mad scientist plot, Reed, writers orchestrating the situation from afar. Much of the entertainment value comes from not knowing the mechanics of what's happening, of being caught by surprise, which doesn't happen often enough. It follows 2014, no less a deconstruction of horror movie tropes than The Cabin in the Woods. It follows literalizes the puritanical sexual politics of slasher films. Being marked for death by a mysterious, heavy-footed ghoul is something that's transmitted through having sex. If you're targeted by this supernatural killer in David Robert Mitchell's film, it's basically because you have an STD. The challenge then is being able to pass on the infection to someone else. The killer will then target them. But once they're killed, it'll come back and haunt you again as if they're the worst contact tracer imaginable. What Mitchell's film, a standout for Disaster Piece's industrial score, establishes are clear rules, something essential for any great horror movie. What's exciting is to see how the action unfolds within those rules, and if it's possible to break them. That's certainly what Maika Monroe's J, a 19-year-old college student, tries to do. Can she trap the killer ghoul? What follows is a swimming pool scene straight out of Jacques Tourneur's Cat People. A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. The Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is one of the better slasher franchises, with few outright duds in the canon and a killer hook. What if your dreams turned deadly? That gives even its weakest entries some claws. Still, it's impossible to beat Wes Craven's 1984 original, a feat of slasher filmmaking that takes all of the lessons from Halloween and applies it to a slick, tight product. Featuring Robert Englund at his most terrifying in the role of burned-alive slasher Freddy Krueger, A Nightmare on Elm Street takes full advantage of its killer in a dream scenario to devise perfectly executed set pieces, from a girl getting dragged across the ceiling to that menacing bathtub shot. The rest of the franchise has bangers, from the homoerotic subtext of the immediate sequel to the metatextual inventiveness of New Nightmare. But the OG is the only one that will truly make you afraid to close your eyes when it's over. Opera, 1987. What if you're forced to witness the most horrible things you could ever imagine? And no matter how much you want to close your eyes, you can't. That's the horrible fate that befalls Betty, Christina Marcelach, a young understudy thrown into the role of Lady Macbeth in Verdi's version of the Scottish play. At unexpected moments, a masked stalker sneaks up on her, ties her up, and affixes needles under her eyelids that force her to watch as he murders someone she knows, usually with a knife. It's a profound violation, the idea of forcing grisly images, traumatic events, and survivors' guilt into one's brain. And Marcelach projects an innocence to Betty that makes her especially sympathetic. That this movie will be about the terror involved in the act of looking is signaled from the stunning opening shot, a close-up of a raven's reflective eye. This raven comes to be important in the resolution of the story, which quickly becomes a procedural about finding the man who's doing this to Betty and leaving such a trail of bodies in his wake. But it has probably the most transcendently batshit ending of any procedural thriller you'll ever see. C.B. Black Christmas, 1974, less celebrated than its peers Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Black Christmas is nonetheless just as foundational a slasher text as its 70s brethren. The Canadian cult classic comes from Bob Clark, who made an extremely different Yuletide classic in A Christmas Story, and who proves more than effective at generating tension and chills while documenting a killer stalking and murdering a sorority during the holiday season. The contrast between the bright lights of the season of giving with the blood and darkness a slasher requires gives the film some kick, as does its solid cast that includes Olivia Hussey, Margot Kidder, and Andrea Martin. But what really makes the film haunting is its enigmatic killer, a normal man whose identity remains uncertain even by the film's closing moments. Black Christmas gives no motive to his killings. He's simply a man that's purely, but recognizably, evil, and few things are more identifiable or terrifying than that. Scream, Wes Craven, 1996. With Wes Craven's New Nightmare, the horror auteur tapped into a fascinating approach to rejuvenating his own genre tropes through meta-storytelling. With Scream, he perfected it. Using movie stardom as a form of narrative misdirection, Scream opens with a masterful curveball that finds supposed lead Drew Barrymore getting axed before the credits roll, facing the unremitting knife of the soon-to-be iconic cloaked baddie known as Ghostface. From there, Craven constructs the ultimate high school slasher movie as film criticism, breaking down the appeal of horror movies and the way they manage to confront difficult subjects under the guise of entertainment. This is the story of a small suburban town with wisecracking kids who have seen all the scary movies and know exactly how this is supposed to play out. But so does the bad guy, which is almost too clever for its own good. That's by design. Scream is also about what it means to feel trapped by formula and routine. What it takes to break the cycle of sameness when everyone's already convinced they know how this story plays out. The brilliance of Craven's filmmaking and Kevin Williamson's script stems from the way they merge the jocular teen dynamics of a John Hughes movie with the genuine dread of facing an actual killer who wants his victims terrified at all times. And it comes as no surprise when the movie reveals that he has help. Rose McGowan's garage death scene is one for the ages. Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Jamie Kennedy, and Liev Schreiber are all memorable as well, conveying the sense that they're at once in on the joke and afraid of it. But Scream is particularly significant for giving Neve Campbell the opportunity to transform the final girl concept into the ultimate vessel for coming-of-age dread. And then there's that eerie query: what's your favorite scary movie? By reinventing the rules and introducing the appeal of horror movies to a new generation, Scream found a new answer to that question for many viewers with its very existence. Candyman, Bernard Rose, 1992, based on Clive Barker's 1985 short story The Forbidden. The film's setting alone, a public housing project, separates it from many of its slasher movie brethren. Director Bernard Rose relocates the story from Barker's native Liverpool to the squalor of the now infamous Cabrini Green projects in Chicago, where crime and neglect created deplorable living conditions for its residents. It was an inspired decision that revised the original story's classist undertones into explicitly racial ones. A gothic horror, the unsettling legend about the hook-handed terror, tells the tale of a skeptical white doctoral candidate working on a thesis on urban legends, who learns of the Cabrini Green Candyman folklore and goes to investigate. Starring Virginia Madsen as an atypical slasher movie heroine, the film boasts one of the horror genre's most intriguing movie baddies, who comes with a tragic backstory that makes him sympathetic, a famous black artist and son of slaves who pays a steep price for falling in love with a white man's daughter after she hires him to paint her portrait. Candyman is played by the physically imposing Tony Todd, whose sonorous voice haunts long after the movie ends. The character may not be as broadly popular as other monsters of slasher movie lore like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and Michael Myers, but he certainly has a cult following all his own. Candyman was followed by two underwhelming sequels, Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh, 1995, and Candyman, Day of the Dead, 1999, and reimagined in 2021 by Nia da Costa and Monkepaw Productions. Dressed to Kill, Brian De Palma, 1980. While master of suspense, Brian De Palma's best films are arguably his adaptation of Stephen King's Bloody Carrie and the John Travolta thriller Blowout. The director made his name with three unsettling, sexually tinged Hitchcockian psychological thrillers, Body Double Obsession, and perhaps his best known, Dressed to Kill. The low-budget indie filmmaker went on to develop his studio style on such movies as The Original Mission, Impossible, Snake Eyes, Carlito's Way, Scarface, and The Untouchables. De Palma shows off his bravura camera moves at the start as he lingers on the nubile Angie Dickinson, actually her double in the shower as a sexually frustrated suburban housewife enjoying a rape fantasy. Later, we return to a gory shower slash complete with glorious arcs of spurting blood. She's one of two women stalked by the psycho killer, who is also following Nancy Allen's smart high-end hooker, who enlists the housewife's son to help her track the assailant. Beyond the psycho reference, De Palma revels in both blondes and voyeurism. Pino Donaggio's superb score ratchets up the unrelenting tension. The Leopard Man, Jacques Tourneur, 1943. A rash of killings befalls a small New Mexico town right after a nightclub owner, Dennis O'Keefe, loses the leopard he'd bought to draw customers. The victims have suffered deep, slashing wounds. The work of the leopard, right? Or could it be that a human murderer is using the escape of the leopard as an excuse to unleash his own killings? Producer Val Lewton knew how to create an indelible sense of atmospheric dread on the tiniest of budgets. The Leopard Man cost $150,000 and runs only 66 minutes, and his signature was to have a scene of a young woman walking alone at night. The Leopard Man has one of the very best of those scenes, when a teenage girl is forced to walk the streets after her mother locks her out of their home. She senses she's being stalked. She runs home, knowing she's pursued, and knocks frantically on the door. Still, her mother won't answer. Then the knocking stops, and a pool of blood begins to seep through the bottom of the door. It's so simple, yet so very effective. The Lodger, John Brom, 1944. The Leopard Man predates The Lodger by a year and probably lays claim to the title of first slasher movie ever with its serial killer stabbing spree. But The Lodger is the one that first deploys much of the iconography of the slasher film: butcher knives, dead eyes, twisted family histories, and point-of-view shots. Character actor Laird Cregar plays a London doctor who goes undercover as the tenant of an elderly couple with a room to let. Unlike in Alfred Hitchcock's Silent the Lodger, a story of the London fog, in which the title character is innocent and becomes one of his famous wrong men on the run, Cregar's Mr. Slade is very much the murderer. He uses his medical knowledge to kill his female victims all the more efficiently, and rhapsodizes about his fear of female sexual agency. He talks about wanting to cut out the sin from his victims so that only lifeless beauty remains, meaning he's basically a necrophiliac, and his obsessive feelings for his late brother, who was led astray by a woman, prompting Slade's killing spree, certainly seem incestuous. Director John Brom captures Slade's deadly sinister male gaze. Much of the film, and particularly of its finale, is comprised of shot-reverse shot sequences of Cregar looking at the beautiful women who disgust him, and sets the stage for slasher movies' obsession with murderers who punish women for having sex or undressing for the pleasure of men. Brom's film a year later, 1945's Hangover Square, goes further, opening with a murder filmed entirely from the murderer's point of view as he plunges the knife into his victim's chest. Halloween, John Carpenter, 1978. 19-year-old Jamie Lee Curtis made her name with Halloween, written by director John Carpenter and his producing partner Deborah Hill, who supplied the first draft with 3 believable 17-year-old girls and a lurking masked killer. Carpenter structured Halloween around making the audience anxious about what was lurking out of the frame. It was usually the shape, Nick Castle, who could be anywhere, in the shadows outside or inside, or right next to you. After Halloween, many filmmakers imitated Carpenter's killer interior, tracking shots in Panavision widescreen, which wasn't used for low-budget horror at the time. Neither were Steadicam shots. "I want you to be so vulnerable people want to take care of you," Carpenter told Curtis, who turned sweet small-town dreamer Laurie Strode into a smart, knife-wielding survivor. It worked. When Strode leaves the house with the kid asleep and walks slowly across the street, audiences screamed at the screen, "Do not go in there." While the $325,000 indie release was a sleeper hit, topping out at $183 million domestic, adjusted, critics were all over the place. Carpenter disagreed with those who suggested that the killer only goes after sexually promiscuous victims, while the virgin survives. Tom Allen in The Village Voice compared Carpenter's shock techniques to Hitchcock and George Romero, while Roger Ebert raved, "If you don't want to have a really terrifying experience, don't see Halloween." The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper, 1974. This is a movie where every character has dirt under their fingernails. Terrifyingly grungy, wickedly lo-fi, this hicksploitation horror is also not really that gory. Director Tobe Hooper knows that our imaginations so easily run wild, just with the very idea of a chainsaw being inflicted on unsuspecting victims, that he doesn't really need to show that much. A group of youngsters run afoul of an inbred family of backwoodsmen, whose most prominent, power tool-wielding member has been embraced by generations of fans as Leatherface, for the mask of human skin he wears. The matter-of-fact way in which Hooper presents the most horrific of evil deeds lends a documentary realism to the story. This doesn't feel like the start of a franchise, but a headline you might have read in a newspaper before quickly turning the page. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, forgettable follow-up films that upped the gore but lowered the scares aside, surprises with its emphasis on mood and atmosphere over jump scares. One of the creepiest moments is when the kids look at a daddy longleg spider, Hooper's camera zooming in. Is the arachnid terrifying, or do we build it up into being terrifying by thinking so?